vector components from magnitude and direction. So what I'd like you guys to do in your journal right now, just make the drawing a little bit easier to deal with. So right now, I know that's not 80 degrees. I'm just going to make it a little bit easier to draw a right triangle. So I realize theta is 80 degrees right here, but what I'd like you to do in your journal is simply draw two components. So make your triangle a little bit easier to work with in your journal. So right here, we're going to call this our x component. And right here, we're going to call this our y component. Does everybody see right now we are in quadrant number 1? So it's going to be an easy problem because in quadrant 1, our x value and our y value are both positive. Okay? So right here, what is our theta right now? Our theta is 80 degrees. And what is what are they saying the magnitude is? What's the length of the magnitude? So could you put a 9 right there? Okay. So if I wanted to find the y value, does everybody understand that across from the 80 degrees that represents my opposite side, and the x value represents my adjacent side, and the 9, which is the magnitude, that's our hypotenuse of this right triangle that we created. The sine of 80 equals y over 9. The cosine of 80 equals x over 9. If we cross multiply, if I put this over 1 and I put this over 1, what will my y value end up equaling? 9 times the sine of 80. What will the cosine end up equaling? X equals 9 cosine of 80. So here's the shortcut that I would like you guys to write down for the first quadrant, okay? If you have the first quadrant and you want to know your x component, take your magnitude and multiply it by the cosine of whatever theta is. Over here, take your magnitude, multiply it by the sine of theta, and this will always work if you're in what quadrant? If you're in the first quadrant. Now we're still going to use this principle, except we might have some negative answers and stuff like that because we're going to be finding the components. Okay? So right now, let's go to our calculators and see if this works. What was our magnitude? 9 cosine 80. Enter. What does that say? 1.56. 9 sine 80. This will make sure you're in what? You're in degree mode. You don't want to do this if you're not in degree mode. So could you guys please write this down and write this down? That's our x component. That's our y component. So for our answer, it's 1.56. So here I'm going to put 1.56 because it says rounded to the nearest hundredth. And here it says 8.86. So I'm going to round that to the nearest hundredth. And if I miss one, it's probably because I forgot to round it correctly. So I think I got those rounded. So I'm going to type in a 1.56 and an 8.86. What do I want to make sure that you guys write down? That's your shortcut, okay? Just mag for magnitude, okay? All right, so we got 1.56 and 8.86. All right. 1.568.86. Good work. Thank you. Okay. Can you guys do this little drawing with me? Because I'll show you guys what to do. It's not going to be that difficult. So when I say do the drawing, you don't have to do everything. I just want you guys to do what I do. It won't take long. Does everybody see this triangle I'm going to make? There's my vector. My magnitude is 5, but I want you to know that when you guys are creating your right triangle, you guys got to make sure that you create it correctly. There's my x component, okay? There's my y component. Remember, see how it has that 150 right here? That means my theta right in here is actually how many degrees? 30 degrees, okay? Yeah, see, so this angle right here, guys, that's not, I'm going to use the 30. I'm not using the 150. You guys got that? Okay. Now, let's do the shortcut now. So you guys see what I did there. I just made a right triangle off of that. So let's find our x component. So what do you think we're going to do for our shortcut? 5 cosine what? 5 cosine 30. Very good. And for our y component, we're going to put 5 sine 30. Now, the only thing I want you to understand, if we do it, I didn't do a very good job of drawing that straight down. There we go. No, listen. Cosine's x, but listen. Do you understand? We're in the second quadrant, right? If we're in quadrant 2, the x value is going to be negative, but the y value is going to be positive. So the x value is negative and the y value is positive. So what does that mean for us when we're doing this? If I type in 5 cosine 30, but I don't want to make that positive, I want to make it what? Negative. So check this out. If I did 5 cosine 150, look. Do you see this is the answer that I actually want? If I did 5 sine 30 and 5 sine 150, does everybody see why are these the same, but these are, because remember, x is what? Positive in the first quadrant, and it's negative in the second quadrant. So what's going to be my answer? Negative 4.33, but my y value is just what? A 2.5. And that's what I'm going to put for my answer right over here. I'm going to put negative 4.33 and 2.5. Because even though this became this, I have to make it a negative because it's my x component. My y component was just 2.5. And that's what those are going to be my components. Okay? So that's 2. Done. Negative 4.33 and 2.5. Quadrant 3, they're both negative. Quadrant 4, the x value is positive, but the y value is negative. Okay? Okay, now we're in quadrant 3. Okay? So, if you really want to, do you see that 220, guys? What if that's 220 degrees? What's this gap right in there? How many degrees do you guys think that is right in there that I shaded in? That's too much, right? What's 180? What's if you take away 180 from that, you're left with what? Not, it's supposed to be a 40. Sorry. So here's what I want you to do. Just draw a little arrow. Okay, the arrow is going to be going down. We're going to have an x component and a y component. So here's our x component. And here's our y component. And how many degrees is going to be right in here? 40 degrees. There's our right angle. So if I want to do my x component, technically you could probably just do this. 4 cosine 220. 4, I'll do green. 4 sine 220. Now, if we do this, should I get a negative answer for both of them? I should, right? I should get a negative answer for this, and I also should get a negative answer for this. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to check in the calculator just to be safe. If this was in the first quadrant, then we would just do, I messed up, this would be cosine. Sorry. There we go. All right, if I was in the first quadrant, those would be my answers. But if I'm in the third quadrant, I can actually use the 220. Okay, so let's check this out. I'm going to clear this out so you don't see a whole bunch of stuff. Let's go and do 4 cosine 40. And let's do 4 sine 40. And so my answers should be negative version of this and the negative version of this because we're in quadrant number 3. So check this out. I do 4 cosine, and what am I going to put in? 220. See how that makes that negative? Now if I do 4 sine 220, so does everybody see kind of the shortcut that you're allowed to do? You can actually do what? Make whatever this is, whatever that is, you can just use that as your theta, and it gets you the answers that you need. So if you would please, this is going to be your answer right here. Your cosine is negative 3.06, and your sine is negative 2.57. So negative 3.06 and negative 2.57. That gets you your components. You're going to need these components when you need to add things together later. When we start adding multiple components together, you got to know how to get your components quickly so you can add them together to get your new results. All right? So negative 3.06 and negative 2.57. Negative 3.06, negative 2.57. I think I got it. All right, last one. Now this last one, we're not going to make you draw anything out. We're just going to do the shortcut. So here's the very final one, so you guys know that, oh, that's all I got to do. We did all the drawings to help you understand why the shortcut works. So right now, we're just going to do the x component and the y component and call this a day. So right now, what's our magnitude? 10. So we put 10. And the x component, what are we always going to use? Cosine. And the y component, what do we always use? Sine. What is theta? 340. And theta over here is also 340. So literally, you just type that in, and that gets you your x component and your y component. By the way, the x value in the fourth quadrant, the x value is going to be positive, but the y value should be negative, just like in the third quadrant where all teenagers live. You have negative x's and negative y's. So just a bunch of negatives down there. Okay? That's why I typically like living in the first quadrant. All right? So, don't worry, nobody listens to these things anyway. So 10 cosine 340. Boom. Positive. 10 sine 340. Negative. Oh, got to be careful here. What do I need to make my cosine? 9.4, because that's 6 rounding that 9 higher. This one just keeps it at what? Negative 3.42. So I got to put a 9.4, and over here I got to do a negative 3.42. I'm about to sneeze. Hopefully it won't be too loud. If you're listening to this video, you might want to close your ears. Forever immortalized on YouTube. All right. So I'm going to go and type this in. 9.4, negative 3.42, and then we'll end the video, but not your life. Nobody's going to be listening to this anyways. 9.4, and no, it's just the truth. Negative 3.42. Okay. Woohoo! Great work. Keep going. No, I'm done.